everyone. Welcome back to the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube for the latest episode of Broncos Now. As always, I'm your host, Sydney Jones, and coming up on today's episode, the team had a lighter practice today while focusing on some more red zone work. Plus, head coach Sean Payton discussed Russell Wilson's camp so far and gave an injury update. All that and more coming up. Today was the 8th training camp practice here at the Centura Health Training Center. And today, the team had a lighter practice. And now that the team's put in over a week of work, head coach Sean Payton evaluated Russell Wilson's performance so far this camp.
I think he's doing well. I like what I'm seeing. I said it yesterday. I think there's times where you're not seeing like a clean picture, something, and he's scrambling in a game type mode, though, where we're running the ball more and, with the installations that we're doing, I think he's doing well. I like where he's at.
Wide receiver Jerry Jeudy also chimed in on Russell's work so far and what he's seen from him.
Russell is great to me, like he always been. Learning this new offense, learning this new system. I know he picking it up real, very good. And he just being consistent, working hard every day in practice, so he's going to keep doing him.
And head coach Sean Payton detailed Jerry Jeudy's camp as well. He described him as savvy and said he's picking up the scheme well. Jerry Jeudy discussed his expectations for this year.
Right now I'm just focused on just being better than I was last year, just each and every day just come out here and just keep grinding, and just keep working and just focus on being a better version of myself each and every day.
Plus, head coach Sean Payton announced that inside linebacker Jonas Griffith tore his ACL and will miss the 2023 season. We heard from fellow inside linebacker Alex Singleton about what it will mean to lose Jonas this year and to get his thoughts on the depth in that room.
Jonas is a huge part of our team. Great in our room. Yeah, it just sucks losing a guy like that. I hate you know how hard he works, everything he puts out there, and then to kind of go back to back with injuries like that. It sucks, and it's a big part of our team. Obviously the last 2 days have been the only days that guys have been able to step up, but guys have been, and guys are playing fast. Guys are taking bigger roles quicker, which is good for guys, and it'll develop guys faster. And like I said earlier, it's good to do it now during camp and let guys develop and find those roles without getting forced into them during the season.
Sean Payton added to that by discussing the team's injuries so far this camp.
I don't think it's out of the ordinary, honestly. I can't speak for the past, but in training camp, you get a few of these. Hopefully, you don't get as many as other teams. But no, we look closely at everything that we do leading up to the drills and practice. One was really a fluke injury, and then the other one happened in a special teams play where he stepped on a foot.
Now joining me here inside the Broncos podcast studio is Broncos lead writer Eric Delala. Eric, another day of practice out here. It is day 8 of training camp, and team seemed to have a little bit of a lighter practice today, but they still got a lot of red zone work in, no pads.
Yeah, they were in shorts and had some shells on, so they were still able to get some decent work in.
Yeah.
Tempo, still pretty decent considering it was a quote-unquote off type of day.
Right.
The league requires you can only have so many padded practices in a row, so they go to kind of a shells-only practice on this Thursday. And, I was still impressed with the tempo. We heard Sean Payton talk about that's
right.
going to be an emphasis. He said he sounded like a broken record in terms of how he wants the offense on the ball. You see these guys sprinting out. They were still competing hard against each other. Because it wasn't open to the fans, we can't talk specific details, but it was,
right.
Again, a red zone focus in practice. They're still installing some things. As Sean Payton said afterwards, he's pleased where Russell Wilson is.
Yep.
It's easy to watch these practices, and I'll just go on a little tangent here about Russ and the offense. Easy to watch these practices where you get 4 snaps at a time and say, okay, there's 1 incompletion or there's 2 incompletions or whatever it might be, and make a judgment on the offense. And you've got to remember, one, that as Sean Payton explained on Thursday, when you scramble out of the pocket in a game, it changes things and kind of plays to Russ's ability. So that's an element that's not there in practice.
Yep.
2, you're going to run the football a lot. We've heard this team talk about the run game being in its DNA. And so you don't see kind of how that opens up the passing game because when you're doing a period out here at practice, the defense, they either know what's coming because of the script or, you're not concerned necessarily the same way you would be or getting worn down the same way you would be in a game where, boom, here's 3 run plays in a row. Now here's a play action pass over the top.
Right.
Those things work in games, and I feel like maybe they don't threaten a defense as much in practice.
Yeah.
And that's in addition to what we've already heard from Sean Payton, that they're running some things right now that are not necessarily designed to beat this Denver defense, this type of front. So I say all those things that just for everyone to take things with a grain of salt as you hear each day, oh, the defense has won this day or the offense has won this day. Practice settings are great and good for learning and good for helping this team progress, but they're not an end-all, be-all of how a game should be. So a little bit of a tangent there, Sid, but I think important to remember kind of as they're back in pads on Friday, we heard they're going to be in the 2-minute drill. As you watch these sort of things, maybe that's actually a little bit closer to what you can, quote unquote game scenario, even though the run game still doesn't take the physical toll, at least you'd assume move the ball, that sort of thing. It becomes more realistic.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens in the preseason and then when we get to the regular season before we make overarching judgments on anything.
Yeah. I appreciate the tangent, Eric. Those are all really good points, and not a lot of people think about at practice and during training camp.
Yeah. I mean,
for sure.
For a 4-play segment for each group is it's hard to gain momentum, but you're just, if this team is going to wear opponents down by running the football, you don't see that in practice. It's not taking the same toll.
Looking at some injury news, Eric, we heard earlier in the show from head coach Sean Payton. He announced that inside linebacker Jonas Griffith will miss this season with an ACL tear. Another unfortunate injury here. Like Coach said, such a bummer with, him missing a lot of last season as while dealing with an injury.
Yeah. Not quite the same as it is with Tim Patrick because Jonas played a few games last year, but certainly he's been rehabbing for a long time. And now to go down before the season even starts. I think Sean Payton said he stepped on somebody's foot in a special teams drill. I mean, it's just, or he got his foot stepped on one way or another. Just an unfortunate way for this injury to happen. You feel for him. Luckily, the Broncos do have some depth there. Obviously, Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton are 2 really good football players. And then Drew Sanders, you bring him in, at a depth signing or a rookie at a UNLV. So you've got some, and then Justin Cernide. I mean, you've got some guys there, but anytime you lose a player like Jonas Griffith, who, even if he wasn't going to start and he has some starting experience, good special teams player, big physical guy that if he needed to could have stepped in. So, a tough injury for this team and certainly for Jonas, who's going to have to go through another year of rehab.
You mentioned Drew Sanders. I want to talk about him a little bit more. Coach had a lot of great things to say about him, likes how smart he is. He feels like he's picking up the install really well. What have you kind of seen from him over the past week?
Yeah, he's fast. He's flying around. He's got good instincts. In these open practices, you see him in the backfield a lot, whether it's tackles for loss, whether it's, just darting in there in the run game, providing good coverage on tight ends. I mean, he's had some good battles against a guy like Greg Dulcich. He's a good football player, and obviously Josie and Alex right now are those guys up front, but you would expect that Drew Sanders, whether on special teams or when he gets in there on snaps, if they're playing certain packages, we'll have to see how that all plays out. But I would expect Drew Sanders to have some sort of role this year as a rookie. Now, what does that look like, and how extensive, and how well does he play, and what sort of game-changing plays does he make? I'm not quite sure, but at the very least, he's a really good depth player, and kind of you have your stars, right, Sid? And then you need a team the rest of the way, whether special teams or second string guys, the 2 deep, to be quality football players as well. And Sid, we know that Drew Sanders, he was mentioned as a potential first-round pick, early second-round pick, falls all the way to the Broncos.
Yeah.
He wasn't happy about it. We could tell that after he was drafted. So he's a guy with a chip on his shoulder, good athleticism, a pressure player, as Sean Payton has said a lot. I'm excited to see, some of these guys you're like, oh, what is it going to look like in the preseason? But whenever it's a rookie, you just truly have no idea. What it's going to look like. He's one of the guys I'm really excited to see out there to see what does he do.
Right. Well, we saw, some kicking drills towards the end of practice today. And, of course, head coach Sean Payton, he talked about that during his press conference as well. Seems like the kicker competition's starting to heat up a bit.
Yeah. We heard from Brett Maher and Elliott Fry the other day. Kind of 2 different perspectives on the kicking battle. With Fry, he acknowledged that there's a competition and he's just trying to catch on for the first time permanently with the team, and acknowledged he's watching Maher and, what he's doing during his kicks.
Right.
With Brett, it seems more almost like he's he's just trying to make sure, and I would assume the team is trying to make sure that kind of the mental / technique breakdown, if you want to call it that, during the playoffs last year doesn't come back. Because he had a really effective season and has proven he can be a full-time kicker. So they're in different places. You're right. It does seem like it's heating up a little bit. Sean Payton said there's going to be some drills soon where they, even as soon as tomorrow with the 2-minute drill, where they put these guys under some pressure, some end-of-game scenarios. During Thursday, it was more of a field goal block sort of situation. So, of course, you sit out there and you chart the makes and the misses, but it was more about the defense there. But so that's going to be an important piece, because this is a team that you would assume if you're battling for the playoffs, there's going to be games that come down to a field goal here or there. You've got to be able to depend on that guy. And something I'll keep bringing up with the kicking competition is we've got our eye on these two players right now, but Sean has made it very clear that you can always go out and find somebody elsewhere. So
for sure,
you're not just competing against, it's not just Elliott Fry versus Brett Maher. It's everybody who's a potential addition around the league, whether that's somebody currently on a team or another free agent out there.
Definitely. Last but not least, Eric, I want to bring up a position group that we haven't really talked about yet this camp, the tight ends. I know some viewers have been commenting on some of our videos asking about them. So what have you really seen from that position group?
Yeah. Well, Adam Troutman, I think, has really impressed me. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Has made some contested catches. He's been out there a lot. He obviously was a guy the Broncos picked up in the draft. I think they swapped a 6th for a 7th and Troutman with the Saints. This is a guy that they said they viewed as a 3rd-round talent this year, and knew they needed to add to that room. So they got him. He's been, I think, he's surprised me a little bit in terms of how involved he's been. So that's been good to see. Greg Dulcich has been kind of the guy you'd expect. You've seen the highlight type catches. You've seen his speed getting away from guys. It hasn't necessarily been as kind of dominant day in and day out as maybe you thought it could be. But again, it's still early in camp, so we'll see how that turns out. And he's a guy that I'm sure is going to be heavily involved. We've heard Sean Payton talk about the joker position and how Greg fits that role. So I'm sure that's going to be something to watch. Chris Manhertz, he's big. He's a guy that can dominate in the run game. We've seen that out there. Albert O has had some nice plays. I mean, you've seen Tommy Hudson. You've seen guys essentially across the board make plays. They're going to have some tough decisions there. I don't know if you keep probably 3, maybe 4 guys.
I was going to say there's some good depth in that room.
Yeah, so we'll have to see how that all plays out. One guy that's kind of stood out to me that has been, I don't want to go into too much detail, but just in terms of his blocking ability, has been Nate Adkins. Undrafted guy, and he can lay the boom a little bit. He's physical, and so excited to see what he's able to do. Tough path to the roster, obviously, but maybe a developmental type guy.
Well, another day of camp in the books, and guys will have pads back on tomorrow.
That's right. Should be fun.
All right. Appreciate you coming on, Eric.
You got it, Sid.
We also heard from rookie safety J.L. Skinner today. He talked about his impressions of the secondary and how blessed he feels to be a part of it.
I think we one of the top secondaries. I think that we have some guys in the room that show that they can do things at the highest level. And me, I'm honestly just blessed to be a part of this secondary because those guys have been doing things at the highest level. PJ, Caden, J. Sims, K-Jack, everybody's been doing things at the high level for a long time. So I'm just blessed to be in that room for sure because it's a lot of vets and a lot of experience.
Well, that'll do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in. Tomorrow marks day 9 of training camp, and the team will be back in full pads. I'll see you all out there tomorrow.